Thank you, everyone. We will begin shortly. To all the participants, you will be muted at the beginning of our webinar. Please address your questions in the chat box and we will address them at the end of our webinar. You can write to Q&A Jackson Cruz so that we can answer them. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jackson Cruz. I am the Education USA advisor here in Managua, Nicaragua. Today's webinar will be about a guidance counselor's guide to the Common App. This is our one of our webinars that we have created for the North America, Central America, and Canada region. This is an overview of what we'll discuss today. First and foremost, we'll talk about what is Education USA, also our upcoming virtual events, and we will proceed with our webinar on a guidance counselor guide to the Common App. Just keep in mind that on October 14th, we will have a webinar on the CSS profile. And on the 19th, we will have our session on our CV. So what is Education USA? Education USA, it's a global network present in more than 175 countries around the globe. This is a Department of State network that provides information to international students wanting more to know about accredited institutions and how to apply. This is of free access and it allows students to know a little bit more on the different procedures on how to apply to colleges and universities in the United States. So just so that you know, Education USA does not have scholarships per se for tuition. What we do can help you find short-term or programs of studies or internships when it comes to the US. And also, we can also help you on finding different opportunities to improve your English. And we can also help different HEIs, opportunities on partnerships with local institutions on the different countries where Education USA is stationed. Some of the services that Education USA provides are, for example, researching your options, how to find that unique institution that will fit each individual's need. Also, Education USA advisors are experts on helping out finding financial aid opportunities. Other opportunities that we have available are on how to complete your application, which is one session that we are doing today, especially for guidance counselors. When it comes to applying for visas, you can have all the information possible. Just know that we do not guarantee that your visa will be accepted in this case, but we will provide you with all the tools and resources so that you can have the best opportunities possible when it comes to the interview at your local consulate. We also have a session on how to prepare for the departure. Once you have gone through all the different steps, so you have acquired your student visa, we will give you a series of guidance on how to adapt to the culture in the United States of America. So right now, I would like to know where you guys or you counselors are joining us from. So please answer the questions on the poll that will be set on your screen. We'll have a few minutes to answer what particular country you are in right now. Is it North America, Central America, the Caribbean, South America, or other? Also, what is your role? Are you a guidance counselor? Are you a teacher also serving as a guidance counselor in your school? Are you a student that will hopefully help your guidance counselor? Or are you an Education USA advisor? Now, does your country also require examinations or exams for students to obtain their high school diplomas? And what type of curriculum does your school offers? Please go ahead and take a moment to answer these particular questions. We'll give it a few more seconds so that you guys can go ahead. And it's amazing. Wow, we do have a lot of people from North America, about 18%, 19% so far are joining us from North America. The Caribbean as well is also, I'm sorry, Central America is also represented here. We have a big quantity of guidance counselors joining us in. Okay, we'll be closing in a second or so. Thank you, everyone. We'll be finalizing our survey at this moment. So we have here that we have a large number of you are from Canada and Mexico. Also, Central America, it's well represented, and South America. We have the majority of you guys are guidance counselor, which is good. We also have a few students and Education USA advisors. We do have that your countries does not provide or ask for an exit exam. And we have a few counselors which schools have IB or AP classes as well. Right. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this short poll. So now we will have Kevin Fuchs and also Rachel Josephs that will be presenting our experts that will be helping out on the Common App. Welcome, Kevin, and welcome, Joseph.
Thank you so much, Jackson, for this opportunity, and to all of the other Education USA team that helped to put this presentation together. So I believe that I'm sharing my screen now. And so I'm Rachel Josephs. I'm the International College Counselor at the Escuela Tomás Alvarezan in Mexico City. And Kevin, I don't know if you'd like to introduce yourself.
I'll just do it quickly. My name is Kevin. I'm the International College Counselor at Peterson School, also in Mexico City.
Okay. Thank you so much. So we prepared this presentation together, and I will be talking about kind of the student side of things, and Kevin will talk about the counselor side of things. So what is the Common Application? It is a system, an online platform that allows students to apply to multiple universities at the same time using the same application. So it makes things more efficient for both students and counselors, that the students are able to fill out the application one time, perhaps tweak it a little bit between one university and the other, but largely send one complete application to multiple universities. And there are about 900 colleges and universities in the United States that offer, that use the common application. Not all of the universities do, but many of them do, as you can see, as well as some other 62 universities in 18 other countries. So it's largely for the United States, but also several other countries as well. It is free for students to use, free for schools to use, although it is important to know that many universities do charge an application fee that is paid through the common application. So we'll take a look at that in just a moment. But we think it's a really an amazing tool and really helps to have counselors help organize and oversee their students in this application process. So you may already know this, but we did want to make a note just as we start that about the holistic admissions process in the United States. So the common application helps us to piece together all of the different pieces that a university considers in an application. And this is why it's such a complex platform. So the holistic admissions approach that many universities in the United States use, really the point of it is that it takes into consideration many different factors and not only test scores and only grades. So in many of our countries, it's likely that the test scores and the grades may be really the only thing that is being looked at in admissions. But in a holistic admissions process, they're also taking a look at the course rigor. If your school is offering multiple types of classes, is the student challenging themselves, taking the more rigorous courses? They're looking at class rank. How does the student compare to the rest of their generación, their class? Their activities and extracurriculars and how they've demonstrated leadership throughout high school. They're taking a look at personal qualities and characteristics that the student has, resiliency, responsibility, leadership, artistic abilities, anything like that, special talents. Some universities will take into consideration demographic information, such as, they're looking to bring in a diverse class, and so students from around the world, from different backgrounds. And there are places for them to put in personal circumstances. So again, all of these pieces come together in the common application to provide a full picture of the student, going much further than just the test scores and the grades. As you all know, we are living through a difficult situation with COVID-19, and for many of us, perhaps those SAT or ACT exams had been such an important piece for our students. And do know that the vast majority of universities in the United States have become test optional, and we'll talk about what that means in a second. But basically, if a student has an SAT or an ACT score that they want to submit that they think is a good reflection of their abilities, they're welcome to do that in most cases, but it will not be a disadvantage to the vast majority of universities if a student has not been able to take tests. In my particular case, I can say that none of my seniors at this point have been able to take an SAT exam because they have been canceled since they've been registered for them. So just keeping that in mind. There's also voices beyond the students in this holistic process. So letters of recommendation, there are essays, all of that, again, coming together to give the complete picture. And I did want to just quickly show, there's a website called Big Future at College Board that you can actually look up. You should be able to see it here. You can look up any university to find out how are they looking at students. So just to give you an example, Johns Hopkins is one that I'm going to show you in a minute with a common application. So using this Big Future website, we can go down to applying, and you can see some data about this. Most selective, 10% of applicants are admitted, but what is important to this university? So in this holistic admissions process, you can see here that the university is prioritizing the essay, the personal qualities, recommendations, rigorous score report, in addition to the test scores. They're not the things that are listed as considering that they take note of them, but maybe they're not the most important things for them. So each university is going to look quite different in this list of what it is that they're looking for. So to me, the Big Future is a great resource. I use it all the time to take a look at, the profiles of the different universities. So there we can just see that information that I just shared, so that when we share with you this presentation, you'll be able to see that. Okay, so I want to go on to talk about the student platform for the common application. So the first steps is that the student is going to need to create their common application account. And you'll see when you go to the website that it will ask, are you a first-year student, a transfer student, or a recommender? So for our teachers and ourselves, we're going to be creating, recommender accounts, whereas our students want to make sure that they do a student account. We as counselors, and I highly recommend doing this, we can create a practice student account, and you'll see that I have a practice student account, and it looks a little bit different than the student one. It is big red practice account on there. So that way we can see what it looks like from the student perspective. So we're going to, your student will set up their portal with their profile, and then they're going to go ahead and add the colleges that they're interested in applying to their My Colleges tab. So making sure that the students are putting in all of their colleges gives them a better overview, and you as a counselor a better overview of what it is that they have to submit. So there is a grid, and I'll show that to you in a minute, of what exactly did the students have to do. So through the platform, the students are going to invite you as a counselor to submit the transcript, which is the list of courses and grades that the student has received throughout high school. They will request a school report and a counselor letter of recommendation. So in order to do this, it's very important that you do have an institutional email that the student is able to add you to their account as their counselor. They are also able, through the recommendation section, to add you as an advisor. So counselor versus advisor. The counselor is the role that you have at your school where you're advocating on behalf of your student. In the advisor role, that is where you can see the application in progress. So you can see a PDF of the student's application as if they were logging in front of you, and you're able to see what it is that they have in their application at the time that they're writing it, so that you can give them feedback. So in the sections of the application, we're going to take a look at this in just a second. You'll see that they ask all sorts of information from the student. It's really quite a very complete platform. And so there's two sections: the common application, where it's just the student fills it out one time and they're able to submit that to each of the universities, and it sort of remains intact. But each college that they're applying to does have its own section where there will be additional questions. So there will be university specific questions. There are sometimes writing supplements. For each university in their list, they will assign the recommenders that they want to use. So it's, students could ask multiple people to write letters of recommendation and assign them to different universities. Although, most of the time that's not necessary. They can ask the same one or two teachers to have that sent to all of their colleges. And college by college, they will have the opportunity to review, pay the application fee, and submit the application. So they will be submitting one by one to each of their universities. So how does a student request this counselor letter? So, and the teachers of letter of recommendation. So right now I'm going to switch over to my common application account so that you can see what it looks like. They're going to fill out the education section and stating that that they study at your school. And then we'll see here that there's, they have to go to the different colleges. So I'm going to show you in what this looks like by switching over to the common application. So you can see here, this is my practice account. And you can see here the tabs that I was saying exist. So the dashboard is sort of the overview. You can see all of the different colleges, and you can see here, what it is that the student has to do in each moment of, for each university. So if in my dashboard, I can click on application requirements, and it will show me a nice grid of the universities, when their deadlines are, the application fee that I mentioned. Some universities are free, others are not. If they need to write the personal essay, so that big, the common application essay, or not. If they have a writing supplement, their test policies, which again, this year are largely going to be flexible, not required. And then here you can see the letters of recommendation that are required. So for example, Johns Hopkins requires 2 teacher recommendations. The University of Chicago requires 2. The University of Minnesota Twin Cities does not require any. However, it's important to note that the student should, in addition to looking here, also look at the individual university's website, because in the case of, for example, University of Minnesota Twin Cities, they will accept up to 2 letters. It's just that they don't require them. Okay, so in this grid, the optional portions are not listed. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. And here's the tab that I was saying, the common application. So this is where you'll be able to fill out all of these different pieces, the profile, the family, and the education. So the student will not be able to add you as a counselor recommender until they've filled out this initial education portion. And so here I have actually said that I'm a student at Kevin's school, Peterson School in Mexico City. And I filled out my date of entry, what kind of school it is, et cetera. So this part does need to be, what is my most current school does need to be filled out before I am able to do this next step that I'm going to talk about. So when I'm ready to add my counselor, I want my counselor to be able to send my transcript, to send my letter of recommendation. I go into my colleges section. And here's, the 3 universities that I'm thinking about, I'm intending to apply to. And then what I do is I choose whichever one I want. So I'll just choose Johns Hopkins because it's the first one. And I drop down the menu, and you'll see here that there are different things that I have to do for this university in particular. Okay, so this is in addition to the regular common application tab. These are specific to the university. So I go to recommenders and FERPA, and you think, okay, what the heck is FERPA, right? So FERPA is a law in the United States that basically it governs student privacy and access to student information. So the FERPA law allows students to have access to confidential letters of recommendation that are confidential in the application process once they have matriculated to university. And they could technically ask for permission to see their, they could go to the admissions office and ask to see their confidential letters of recommendation. So what the FERPA is release authorization is asking for is for the students to release or waive that right. Why do you want to waive this right? Really, it's because when you waive your right to see the confidential letters of recommendation, that signals to the university that you're trusting your recommenders, and your recommenders are able to write freely. They're able to write in an authentic and true sense about you as an applicant. They are not feeling pressure because they think that you might see this letter in the future. So if you choose not to waive your FERPA right, the university may kind of say, okay, well, then we're not going to take into consideration these letters of recommendation because we feel that the teachers are not necessarily writing truthfully. Okay, so when you you can read about that in the Learn More About FERPA, but I did just want to explain it. So the first step, you'll go on to complete the waivers. So let's see. So it will tell you about this that I'm just saying, and the student would say, okay, I have read and understood the FERPA release authorization. What does that mean? They're going to press continue. This first step, this is giving permission for your counselor to release records on their behalf, so the transcript and other letters. And then here is where it's going to ask them to waive or not waive the right to review the recommendations and supporting documents. So again, I always said, legally the student has the right to not waive this right, but I always suggest to my students that they say, yes, I waive my right to review all recommendations and supporting documents, because again, that signals to the university that my teachers are free from pressure from me in any way. And then I write to that, okay, I understand that my waiver cannot be changed once I've selected it, okay? And I put save and close. And then I'm going to type my name. My signature is my name, and I'm going to put the date. Okay, and then once they post save and close, that's it. This FERPA waiver will apply to all of the universities that they apply to. So that then, once that's finished, that releases the rest of the information. So they're able to go in here and invite your counselor. So, if I wanted to do Kevin, and what his title is, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I am sending that email to him, and then that will signal on his side, Rachel Josephs, your student, your fabulous student, Rachel Josephs, Kevin, is asking for a letter of recommendation and needs her transcript sent and needs all of these reports, okay? Then here is where you're able to invite teachers. So this university is requiring 2, so I put in here, who it is that I want to have my, write my letters of recommendation. Maybe it's my math teacher and my English teacher, whoever it is. And I'm also here able to invite Kevin as my counselor. I'm able to give him access to my application as my advisor. If I'm working with EducationUSA, I could also, for example, put my EducationUSA advisor here. It doesn't have to be just your student, your counselor at school. Okay, so that's where you would do that. And the teachers have to be assigned to the universities individually. The counselor will apply to all of the universities you're applying to. That will, filling out this once as my counselor will apply to everyone. But you do have to go university by university to assign the teacher recommenders. So I hope that that is clear. I'm going to head back to my presentation. So that's where you do that. So you will receive an email from the Common Application saying, your student wants an application, or wants their transcript and their reports. So this is where I was saying about, in that list of universities, you can check exactly what it is that each university requires. And here is where it will, say whether they'll accept additional letters of recommendation or not. So you can see here, Johns Hopkins, they require 2, but they don't give you any option to add additional ones. If you wanted a 3rd teacher for Johns Hopkins, they don't want a 3rd letter. It's saying there that there is no additional letters accepted. So there's that. We already talked about that. I do also want to mention, because this comes up a lot with my students in particular, a lot of my students are looking for need-based financial aid. They have very few resources with which to go to university. And these universities applications do have a cost. And so for those students who really are top students, and I feel that they have a good shot at universities that do offer need-based aid, I do tell them about this fee waiver. This is an option. So the Common Application will ask, do you qualify for a fee waiver? And you can see here, this is the questions that it asks. There's all different ways in which a student could be eligible for that fee waiver. However, the one that my students would use as international students is this one. The My Annual Family Income falls within the income eligibility guidelines set by the USDA Food and Nutrition Service. So that's really the only reason, but as well as maybe the last one, I can provide a supporting statement from my school college access counselor, financial aid officer, or school leader saying that I have financial need, that this would be a barrier for me. So in terms of, I as a counselor, knowing whether or not my student should receive a fee waiver, because sometimes that's a gray area. That's why I like this income eligibility guidelines, because this very clearly states what is the annual, monthly, bi-monthly, like quincena pay that a family would be could receive and still be eligible for a fee waiver. So if a student has, let's say the student is from a family of 4, they have another sibling, and the family makes less than $48,470 per year, then I feel confident saying, yes, this student is eligible for a fee waiver. All right, so quickly, common questions and confusions that our students may find when they're filling it out. And there's a really great resource that the Common Application has for counselors to give this information to the students, like a little worksheet that you can give to the students so that it's not so confusing. Oftentimes my students don't really know their GPA. We have an internal GPA as well as an UNAM GPA, which is like their official GPA, so they're not sure which one to use. And the Common Application will ask, should it be weighted? Should it be unweighted? And weighted means that you may have AP classes, you may have honors classes, something where whatever grade that student earns in that class counts more for their grade point average. In our school, we are unweighted. All of our classes count the same toward their promedio, their GPA. It's just a straight mathematical calculation. So for us, it's unweighted, and that's probably the case for most of your schools. My students don't know their class rank, and this is kind of a philosophical question for your school. Do you want to provide your students with their class rank or not? I personally do provide that information for the students going abroad, even though that's not something that traditionally our students know. So I will provide that class rank, on a one-to-one, case-by-case basis for my students. The Common Application will ask them about, what kinds of courses they're taking in their senior year, in their last year of high school. And it will ask them, are they AP classes, IB classes, honors classes, et cetera, et cetera. My school, which is a national curriculum school, we don't have any of those things. And so for all of our students, they pretty much almost leave this basically blank, because none of the qualifiers count for my students. They feel nervous about that, but it's fine. The universities are just trying to gather that information in an accurate sense. So it's totally fine if your students don't have anything to answer there. The activity list is another thing that can be challenging, and we're going to talk about it in just a second, but you want to write it in a compelling way. The writing section is really, really difficult. And so I recommend everyone use the college essay guide, as well as Education USA resources for writing those the essays, because that is a huge part of the application process for many schools. Something else that's confusing is that applying to the university is not the same thing as applying to financial aid. And those are two separate processes. And so filling out the common application will not be the same thing as applying for need-based financial aid and sometimes merits scholarship. So very, very important that the student check the university's website to see what is the financial aid or scholarship application process. And then testing can be confusing as well as when to report. So just so you know, testing, they do give you the option to self-report, but if the university is not requiring a test, as is the case right now, and the student doesn't want to self-report, you know, maybe they took the SAT or the ACT a while ago and they didn't do so well, they don't want to report it, they don't have to self-report. So there's, you'll be able to see this information on the common application. It will tell you and give a link to the test requirements at the university. There's also a great counselor in Monterrey who I recommend. She has a list of test optional and test blind schools. So again, students, especially in this cycle, do not necessarily have to report. Also important for those who do have a test score and they want to be able to report it here, they should check if the university still requires an official score report sent from the SAT, from the ACT, from the TOEFL, you know, to the university, or if the self-reported score on the common application is enough for the university. So it's a way to save money for the students if they are able to just self-report and not have to send that official score report. The official score report for all universities will be required if once they decide to matriculate to a particular university. That's when they do have to do send the official score report, but there are many universities that want this even in the application process. So check one by one. Extracurricular activities, everyone understands that extracurricular activities are challenging at the moment. And so we will be showing in a moment, Kevin will talk about, there's a place for the student to talk about disruptions to their lives due to COVID-19. But just for your students to understand that everyone is in the same boat with this, and it's a great opportunity to show resilience. Is there a way that they can pivot and do some things online that they weren't able to do prior? But you know, maybe now an extracurricular activity is that you have to help your mom or dad with your younger siblings, and that's not something that you used to have to do. That can absolutely count as an extracurricular activity, family responsibilities that you may have that you didn't have before. Very important to use dynamic verbs in explaining those extracurricular activities and talking about your key responsibilities. I really recommend using the College Essay Guys activity list resources, because he talks about, you know, how to really make those extracurricular activities sound great. Finally, I do want to just mention that there's lots of, sometimes universities have supplemental writing sections. And so you'll see that some universities, it's basically like a totally new essay. You can see, for example, the new school has a 500 to 650 word supplementary essay. So it's a big deal. There are also universities that have shorter ones. So for example, Stanford is well known for having maybe like 10 additional questions that are just kind of mini essays. University of Chicago, I put here, is just famous for having really wacky and fun questions. And so if a student is excited about those questions, maybe they're a great fit for that university. And if they're not excited about those questions, then that indicates that they're not a great fit for that university necessarily. So keeping students organized, that's a huge part of our role. Just wanted to point out that the Common Application does have a counselor toolkit that's really helpful. So this right here that you see is actually kind of some resources that they have ready to go to download as counselors to help with the university process. So they have a great worksheet where students are able to, you know, make a list of the different requirements that each university has. The high school details information sheet that I mentioned, that's a really great resource. There's also for the students a Your Path to College section that has grade by grade checklists of what they should be doing in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. So they have it in the student section, but I think as counselors, great resource for us as well to make sure that we're helping our students with the appropriate activities each year. So I'm going to hand it over to Kevin. Thanks so much for your time.
Okay, so let me just, I need to change it from my computer. Sorry. Oh, it's not showing, right?
No, we can't see.
Okay, sorry. Is it working now? I'm sorry. Yeah, it is, right? Yeah.
I'm not seeing it, but I don't know if others are seeing it. Oh, there you go.
No,
Yeah.
it is. Sorry. Yeah, it's the first time I'm using Zoom actually. Okay, so to continue what Rachel was saying, very important in the student platform, there's room for COVID, right? So Common App made a special space in the student platform, so students can talk about how COVID affected them. They don't have to do it; it's not mandatory. But if they want to talk about COVID, like this would be the place. I don't recommend students talking about COVID in their other essays because I think many students want to talk about COVID, and you know, like in the end, like we're all living COVID and we're all like living it differently. So this is the perfect space to talk about this. So students will have up to 250 words. They don't have to talk it if they don't want to, but it's here. Unless, I mean, it could be that their story is so interesting that it would work, but in general, I wouldn't recommend it. And then for us as counselors, there's also going to be a section where we can write about how our school is dealing with COVID, right? So like as a school, how we made adjustments to our curriculum, or like if we have changed any grading scales, if we change our policies, also the graduation requirements, if we've changed the instructional methods, which I assume we all did, right? How we adapted our schedules and courses, testing requirements, the academic calendar, and any other circumstances, right? So we have up to like 500 word space, and we also have a room where we can upload our high school profile. And the high school profile, as soon as we upload it, because of like what Rachel just showed, and I'm going, I think I'm gonna do that right now. Yeah, I'm just gonna go in. So actually, you can see my screen still, right? So here, this is, I didn't even know that you could do that from a practice account, but this is the practice account that Rachel, so Rachel made me a recommender, right? So this is the email you get. So the first time, if you don't have any students right now, the first time a student makes you a recommender, and if you haven't done this before, I also suggest that any student interested in studying in the United States using the Common App, ask them to already start doing this, because that gives you like enough time to also set up your profile, right? So all you have to do, if you don't have, like in my case, I already have a profile, right? Which is here. I want to see if it pops up, maybe. Then it would say, yeah, so no, Rachel is also my student. I didn't even know that this would happen, but and so as you can see, this is the, no, it's fine. It's fine. So as you can see, here, this is the recommender part of the Common App. So this is totally different than the one that Rachel was showing earlier. So here we have our students at this moment. I'm sorry, the names are here. These are 2 students that have already started the Common App application. Actually asked them to make me recommender so I can start also working on the profile. And so here would be where we as a school, we can like write our profile, right? So first of all, like we need to give information about us. There's going to be a lot of personal information, but it's fine. So like, this is my information. We have to make sure that like we have all these details, your phone, your email. If you have LinkedIn or like any profile, like you can add this here, and you basically follow this, right? So I'm just going to continue, just going to go over everything, right? So here's the information about my school. So you can look up your school as well. Like normally, like your school should be in it, right? You can add your website. So this is the website that I have, and here you can see that section that I was talking about earlier. So if you made any changes, you can write that here, right? Something very cool, and I don't know, like I don't think Rachel mentioned it, but this is also very important for students as well, just as for us, is that the Common App works really well with Google Drive. So like my school, for instance, we're a Google school. So like our students use Google all the time. And you know, like with all the essay questions, like don't let them write in here. I would recommend them to create a folder per university, per question that they ask for, make like different Word docs so they can start working in those documents as well. And they can go over it. They can even share it with you as a counselor, so you can look at what they're doing as well. And then at the end, when they're done, they can just like import it via Google Drive, which is a very cool way as well. So I think this is also very important to mention. It works for the student and it works for us. And I think for students, it gives them a chance to, you know, like they don't have to go in all the time. They can just do it from their drive whenever they have time for it. They can even make the documents available offline, right? If they have internet that's not working really well, they can have those documents also offline. And then when they're done, you know, like also the good thing about it is that it checks your spelling. So that's also really important. If you see any spelling mistakes here, you can always mention it because I actually used Google Drive as well, right? So in this case, I'm just going to show you, you know, like as a response to COVID-19, like we've gone fully virtual, March 20. So like basically I talk about, you know, like what we're using, like all our students have a MacBook, so they all have access to it. We're at IB school. Our students graduated, like our seniors graduated based on the internal IB assessment, predicted the grades and historic data. Again, like I talked about the IB. I talk about like in our case, our students that did not get the IB diploma, all students that graduated, they get the UNAM high school diploma, like part of their high school diploma. Right. And then, for instance, in our school, we started like focusing on like virtual clubs. So like I talk about to promote for social integration, we have created virtual clubs so students can work on extracurricular activities and gain leadership skills virtually, which have been like very successful, I would say. I talk about the fact that we, you know, like the government is prohibiting us from going back, and we will probably go back as soon as we have a green stoplight. I mean, it makes sense if you live in Mexico, but so, and then, you know, like I even talk about when we do go back, we have a 2-week rotation hybrid system. So students will go to school 2 or 3 days a week. And that will also make sure that they will, like everything that we do in our school will make sure that we get to the numbers that they need, right? So it doesn't have to be too much. And then what's really important is the high school profile. And I think there's going to be a section on the high school profile, right? In my case, I'm still waiting for it as well. I definitely recommend you to check out that section because I do think that the high school profile for us as foreign schools is going to be very important, right? So like we have to make it very interactive. We have to make it very interesting, very sexy. I don't know if I can say that word, but like I think we have to make it like that because I think that's going to be good for our students. I'm sorry, I'm Dutch, so like my English could be very basic sometimes, right? So here I can upload the school profile. And then like there's the mid-year grade. So this is also very important. The students that started, they have like an initial report. So we get the transcript of the students that, you know, like how they're doing up until their junior year. And then the first semester in my case finishes at the end of December. So like our mid-year grades are typically available beginning of January. And that's when I can start sending out those transcripts, right? Then it asks about the graduating size class. So like in our case, it's 46 students, right? So students graduating, attending a 2-year college, like I just put one, because honestly, I think in our case, most students, they do finish university afterwards, right? So if students would go to only do an associate degree in the United States, that you can count those students. And then you add the percentage of graduating class attending 4-year college. So afterwards going abroad, so 99. Percentage of students who are Hispanic or Latino, like Latinx. So in my case, I put 98% because we have one student who's from Asia. So that student is the percentage of students who are Asian. If you don't have any students, you just leave it open. I find these questions very hard, and Rachel and I, we talked about it yesterday as well, right? Like I'm leaving most of these open, those questions. I do talk about the percentage of students who are US citizens. So I have 10% who have a US passport as well. And then 90% who are non-US citizen, right? We don't have we don't have a lunch at our school. So I left this open. It talks about the school setting. In our case, we're urban, we're in the city. Which of the following courses are offered at your school, right? Like in my case, we are an IB school, so we have IB courses, but Rachel, for instance, like she uses the Mexican curriculum. So it's okay also if you don't have anything here, right? So AP and honors, like many schools don't have that, and there's nothing wrong with it. In the end, what this is doing is that this is providing the universities with a profile of us as a school, right? So they will be looking at, and that's also why the high school profile is so important, because they want to see what else you do at your school. At our school, it talks about the number of IB courses offered, right? So this is because I clicked on IB, this question pops up. We have 17 IB courses offered, and our students take 7 IB courses, which is the 6 that you have to take, and then they have talk as well. Are they on a block schedule? In my case was no. And actually, I'm so sorry, Rachel, but I forgot. You explained it to me yesterday, but what was that again? Sorry.
Yeah, so just to explain, so a block schedule would mean that some schools will cover a full year of content in one semester. So the students will basically take like a double period of a particular class, and then in, let's say, fall, and then in spring they will not take that class anymore. That's what a block schedule is. I don't know of any schools in Mexico, for example, that have that type of schedule, but just so you know, in case yours does.
Yeah, thank you. See, for the Dutch, like block is when they have 2 periods, so that's kind of like my confusion. And then they graduate. So this is the day when students graduate. In our case, our students graduate on June 18, 2021. Is my school located outside the United States? Yes. Do we use AP curriculum? No, I already said that, but it's there. And do you complete applicants' academic ratings and the Common App School Report? In our case, we don't. So I said no. I know some schools do, like we just don't. Does your school require students to perform volunteer service? So in our case, they do, because that's a requirement for the IB. So that's a CAS requirement. And here you can write like what is required, right? And then class rank. In our school, we don't rank. So like, again, I said no. It's pretty easy, right? And then do you report GPA? So in our case, we do report GPA. Our GPA scale is 10. So in Mexico, like basically your grade is between 1 and 10, right? Our high school is 4 years. It's a little bit complicated because Mexico high school is 3 years, but our school's high school is actually 4 years. So like the last year of Mexican secondary is part of high school already at our school. So in our case, our students started high school in August 2017, right? So like the students that are graduating this year are the students that, and this is also like, there was a question that was asked last week in a counselor chat. What if a student is like took a year off, right? A gap year? Because when you're recommending that student, the information that you're providing in this profile is not valid, right? You would have to do it separately and you would have to delete it. So that's going to be, if you have a student that has already graduated and starts college like a year after a gap year, they can still make you like a recommender, but the profile that you have here is only for the seniors that you have now. Right, so in our case, our students start August 2017 is when they started, and they will finish in June 2021, right? GPA weighting. So this is also very important. I attended this week. I attended a chat of the University of Southern California, and they talked about it, how they preferred schools to give unweighted grades because they kind of have a system to give grades, right? So like in our case, also we don't weigh grades, so we don't give more importance to some courses and less importance to others. So we keep them unweighted, which apparently is preferred by the universities. School passing mark. So this is the grade that is needed to pass a course in our school. So like a 6 at our school is a passing mark, and the highest grade you can get is a 10. Right, so this is important for the school to realize like how these like what these transcripts mean, because as you can imagine, I can imagine that many schools don't have the same system as our school, right? So each school is going to be different. Some use A, B, C, D, like more American style, right? And then the transcript. So our current course is listed on the transcript. In my case, for instance, when I had to find this all out, I just asked for a transcript and I started started looking at the transcript and seeing what's on there, because sometimes we don't know, like what they hand out. It's always like these different departments. So in our case, like the courses are listed on the transcript, and there's so our college entrance examination scores included with visible on the transcript. In my case, I don't have them included. So like if students take any entrance examination, it's not part of the transcript. And then indicate the most recent grades included on the transcript. So like, for instance, this year, like at this moment, the first grade report that I'm sharing are the final junior year grades, right? I don't know if everybody knows what this means, but like a junior year is like the penultimate year, right? So like the graduating year is this year, so they're called seniors. So in our case, it's the final junior grade years, right? It could also be that the first quarter is already over, but we do them per semester. So in our case, it won't have. But if your school already gives transcript per quarter, like this could be an option for you as well, right? And then again, it asks about, like, we're an international school, that we are an international school and we use English. Most courses that we have are offered in English, right? Because they're also IB. Then international applicants. So this is a very important question. Some countries, like my own country, the Netherlands, we have an examination at the end of our senior year, and to graduate from high school, you need to pass that examination, right? In Mexico, for instance, in the Mexican like educational system, there is not a test like that. So in my case, the answer would be no, right? But if in your country there is a test for your students to graduate, the answer would be yes, right? In my case, I also have IB, so our students will also, like, they will do, to get the IB diploma, they will do this examination, but it's not part of the national curriculum. And our students will graduate from Peterson and they will get the Peterson diploma, but they will only get the IB diploma if they actually like pass the IB program. So this is, in our case, the answer here would be no. Then it also talks about like how the marking scale is used, right? And it's kind of like translated to the United States. So in this case, anything between 9 and a 10 would be an A. Anything between 8 and 8.9 would be a B. Anything between 7 and 7.9 would be a C. Anything between 6 and 6.9 would be a D. And anything under it, so like anything failing, would be 0 to 5.9. Right, and then at the end, what you have to do is you have to, first of all, it's very important as a counselor, we have to make sure, we have to keep track on as well ourselves. We have to make sure that we send in all the grade reports from our end, right? So like you have to make sure that you click on this box, and this actually also tells them that you're going to be sending all these transcripts, right? So you don't forget that. And also you have to click on this one. So well, actually, I don't think you have to. You don't have to do that, but I think it's important because they do send some important information sometimes. Right, so I don't know if I'm going back to the presentation. Yeah, I went over a few of these things already, but at least you've seen it, right? So like, again, the counselor responsibilities. So we have to create our counselor profile and upload the school profile if we have them. This year, it's very important to have a really good one because of what Rachel said as well. Like many testing centers have canceled their test. Students aren't taking the test that they would normally take. So this year as school, we also have a very important responsibility, and we have to make sure that we are as honest enough and also like give the universities a good overview of who we are as a school, right? So like all the information that I just showed, like we have to make sure that we update it. I'm Rachel, I think you're going to be sending your school profile. I'm still waiting for mine. And then also very important, we have to submit all these school reports for each applicant, right? So the GPA ranking, if we use it, like I said, I put no, so in my case that won't matter. The rigor of curriculum, disciplinary history. There's a question. Did I? Oh no, I have to go to that profile as well. That would be good. Actually, I'm going to do that with yours, Rachel. So the disciplinary history, the transcript, and then again, like the international school, language of instruction, grading scale, all this information helps the universities understand who we are as a school, right? And then again, what we have to do is we have to give a council recommendation, and I'm going to that as well. I think I'm going to skip because I don't want to skip too much, right? I talked about those school reports, right? So at the beginning of the year, we send the school report, and then the mid-year report is available depending on when it's available at your school, and when the students graduate, like we also have to send a final report. This is going to be very important. I'm going to skip really quickly. I'm going to go first. I'm going to my student Rachel. Right, so here you can see kind of how she's doing, like the school report. It's still in process because, so we don't rank, right? So here, like normally, if we would rank here, we could write down exactly how Rachel would rank. Obviously, she would be number one, right? Because we all know Rachel, she's a good student. Here we have to fill out all the information again, right? So do we report GPA? I already said yes, so this is gonna be automatically here. And then the only thing I have to do is I have to check Rachel's transcript, and I have to put her GPA, right? She's an excellent student, so she has a 10. it's unweighted, right? And this all this information is already filled out. So it's really important, as you can see, is to first work on your profile, because if you have already worked on your profile, it's already automatically at the student. So you don't have to go back and forth, right? And those things stay the same. So that's also so once you've done that, you don't have to do it twice, because if you're going to do it per student, you're just going to give yourself a lot of extra work, which I don't know about you, but I don't want more work because I'm already overwhelmed with all the webinars and all the stuff that we're doing. So the curriculum as well, like in comparison with other college preparatory students, we can write here. So this is also very important because this gives us a chance to brag a little bit about like the courses that we take, right? So if Rachel would be taking like the best HL classes, like she would be most demanding, right? Is she an IB diploma candidate? She would be, because that's mandatory at her school. Would she be doing the advanced Cambridge diploma? In our case, we don't offer that, but could be. And AP capstone, like we don't either, right? And then this is also going to be very important because, and we actually had a discussion about this as well yesterday, right? So as the applicant ever found responsible for a disciplinary violation at your school, whether related to academic misconduct, behavioral misconduct that resulted in the applicant's probation, suspension, removal, dismissal, or expulsion from your institution. Well, this is like a hard one, right? But in my case, like obviously it's Rachel, so it's going to be no, right? If it's yes, and you feel okay talking about it, you can do yes. But if you feel it's yes, but you don't want the student to be kind of like, you know, like counted for it, because like from the Dutch perspective, I know this is EducationUSA and I talk about the Dutch the whole time, but from the Dutch perspective, everybody deserves a second chance, right? So in my case, if it would be my student and I'm working with my student, I wouldn't recommend the student anyway if I wouldn't be behind that student, right? I would put school policy prevents me from responding. So I think that would be the best one, because I feel like everybody deserves a second chance, right? And then the other question that it asks is, would you prefer to discuss this over the phone with an admission office? So you can say yes, or you can say no. I actually thought yes would be the best way to do it, but Rachel pointed out yesterday that the best would be to say no, because then, you know, like it would appear that there's going to be like, if it's over the phone, there's not going to be any email, so there's not going to be any evidence, so it could be suspicious. Did I explain that right? Like that's how you said it, and I thought it was really interesting.
I would just say that if you say yes, then that may signal to the admissions office that there might be something, you know, that you feel that you can't put down in email. And so oftentimes people will say yes if they would prefer to, if something requires greater explanation. So it's not always a nefarious thing. It's not always a bad thing. But sometimes universities don't always have a chance to follow up with you by phone. And so they might be left with a question mark. I would, say you could always reach out to the university with a phone call yourself as well. If there is something that you feel like you need to advocate for the student in a way that you feel like you can't put in the common application, you can always pick up the phone. The admissions officers are fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. That's like a change of perspective and very interesting. I'm happy that you told me that yesterday, because I thought, okay, I'm just going to say yes. And I do think it's very important. I'm going to talk about that when I'm talking about the recommendations. So here also, like, we have to do the transcript, right? So if a student studied at other schools, if they're a transfer student, or if they have if they studied a year abroad, you can send in more transcripts, right? In our case, we kind of use the same transcript, we just put them on ours. So like I just put one, right? And then the most recent transcript again works from Google Drive. And also just normal, I'm not going to go in it, right? Our course is listed on the transcript. This is also a question that you've seen before. So this has already been filled out. And then you just reaffirm, you say which one it is, right? And then what you can do is you can recommend this student, right? So obviously I would recommend her enthusiastically. And then we have the international school, and all this information, like I said earlier, has already been filled out because you already did this in your profile, right? So again, if you don't want to do the work twice, make sure that you update it here, right? And then you review it and you submit it. I want to go quickly also, I want to talk about the letter of recommendation, because again, this is going to be very important. Normally as counselors, we're expected to to hand these in as well, right? Some schools have so many students that it's okay if we can't recommend them all, right? But in general, like what you have to know about the recommendation letter as a counselor is, first of all, like it puts students in contact of the school, right? So we don't talk about the classes per se. We talk about anything else that the student did outside, right? Well, we can anticipate and provide explanation of red flags, right? There could have been an issue that caused the student to have like a lower grade and a lower grade level, and we can talk about, you know, what happened and how the student like developed afterwards, and like the you know, like the way the student grew. We can touch upon academic, extracurricular, and personal characteristics of the student. And we can also talk about how a student stands out in the community, right? Whereas students, teachers, whereas the teachers, sorry, I didn't put present, right? So the teacher recommendation puts the student in the context of the classroom of the class that the teacher is teaching, right? So it focuses more on the academic and personal characteristics, like focused in this specific project, assignment, class discussions, and also a contribution to class dynamic. How would things be different without the student? And this is also going to be very interesting because as a counselor, I don't know if you're the same, especially because we're virtual counselors too now, right? So we don't see the students as much as before. So if students don't come to, if they don't have any meetings with us, if they don't meet with us, and you know, like we have no idea, right? So how do we get all this information? And there's certain things called brag sheets. And what I did this year, I made them virtual. So I'm going to show you, for instance, I made this form, and I would be happy to share this with you as well, right? So this is like a virtual brag sheet. So this is what I send a student. If a student asks for a letter of recommendation, like I have the student fill out everything, right? So like full name, the 3 words that best describe you. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be? What do you consider personal highlights about your high school experience? What personal characteristics are you most proud of? How do you plan to live a meaningful life? Do you have a background, interest, identity, talent that is meaningful, right? Share your story, list 3 books that you've read that impacted your life. What is the major or program you're interested in? Why do you want to study this? Where do you wish to attend university and why, right? And like they can, these are all like paragraphs, so they can write a lot, right? Briefly describe the success or accomplishment you experienced at school that could be great to mention in your letter of recommendation. Comment on your highlight or experiences in the score, sport, or activity, something you did. What do you consider the academic highlights, honors, awards of your high school experience? Well, in my case, I also teach the global politics class, right? So I added this question, what paper project have you written in this class that you're most proud of? And what are some of the out of school activities, including a part-time jobs? And where will we be 10 years from now, right? If students that I don't really know, like they can fill this out, and that gives me like more information, right? Obviously, I also talk to the teachers to get like a, you know, like overview and if they agree with it. In my case, the students that want to go to the United States are students that have been working with me for a really long time. So I also know them and I know their motivation, but it's good for the students to do this as well because it will give them also some self-reflection, right? And obviously, because this year, it's not just the counselors, well, it's not just only counselors that give letters of recommendation, also teachers, right? Like my colleagues, they are asking me like, how am I going to do it? So I created also a form for teachers, right? So it's a little bit like less, like it's just full name, what are you interested in? Why do you want to pursue this career? Where do you wish to attend, right? What words describe you? Like all these questions are basically the same. It's just like a little bit shorter. And it focuses like on what you know, like why are you asking this teacher for a letter of recommendation, right? So like this I shared with my teachers as well, so they can take advantage and you know, like ask the students themselves. I don't know if I'm forgetting something, right? But again, like this recommendation this year is going to be super important. Like we really have to. I feel like we always have to go the extra mile as counselors, but this year we have to even go the extra, like, well, double the mile. And then again, like managing the recommendation. So again, this is kind of what I talked about already, right? So helping students. So like it also is very important to show like who should we ask for a lot of recommendation, especially like which teachers, you know, like which teacher you have a good relationship. What do you want to study? And I feel like, you know, based on what you want to study, you should find a teacher that is like related to that course. The brag sheet and the teacher request form is the example that I just showed. Best practices for supporting teachers. So this is the other thing, right? Some teachers don't speak English. So if students want to go abroad, that's going to be really hard to do. And I don't know if there's universities that even accept in Spanish. I know some universities, they have lots of admission officers that do speak Spanish, right? Lots of them are actually focused on Latin America. So in general, they do speak Spanish. I would always ask with the college that they're going to, if it would be possible to give these in Spanish, because I do think that they could also be very helpful, especially this year, right? And then we're going to be sharing this presentation with you, but there's one from MIT, Letters of Recommendation, and Carleton College is a small liberal arts college in Minnesota. And they have a really good resource page for letters of recommendation. So you have to seriously check it out. For us as counselors, I don't know if you heard about the bullet point recommendation letters. Those are also very in. And I think also there's going to be a webinar about letters of recommendation, right? Or it was last week, I guess, right? And again, the last thing that we have to constantly update our school profile, right? So we have to, if we make any changes, make sure that we go back to the Common App and like show these changes as well, right? Because it could be that because of the pandemic, the way it's developing, it could be that like we're using something right now and we might change it again later. So it's really important for us as counselors to be on top of that. And I guess that's going to be it. So any questions? I think Jackson has it.
Thank you, Kevin, for such a wonderful presentation. And thank you, Rachel, again, for being part of this webinar on a guidance counselor guide to the Common App. And we do have a few questions for you guys. For example, Dana asked, how do I now opt out of the class rank when I already done it so previously? Can I do that as an option?
I think, yeah, it's like if you go back, you can just change it. Do you want me to show it? I can even show it quickly. Rachel, you wanted to say something too?
And I will say that if you've already submitted it for a student, then you can't change it necessarily. I mean, you could always email the college to say, we're no longer going to rank, but as long as you haven't submitted the application for the student, then you can always make changes.
So very important.
Yeah.
If they haven't submitted it, you know, they can do it, right? Sorry.
Yeah, just go back here and make sure you save it, and it automatically go. Everything that you do before submitting will be there.
Excellent. Thank you. Does an unweighted GPA affect the possibilities of admissions or even acquiring financial aid?
So I would say, and I think Kevin mentioned as well that he was in a webinar where they talked about actually preferring unweighted GPAs. The GPA, your transcript is always going to include all of your students' classes, and they're going to get the full details there. So the universities are not going to necessarily just take whatever GPA you state and that's it. They're going to look at the transcript very carefully, and many universities will recalculate your GPA. So even if you're giving them a GPA, they're going to do their own calculation to figure out, you know, what the way that they want to see it. So in that sense, I would say it almost doesn't matter if you have an unweighted or a weighted GPA. You should just, you know, report it the way that your school prefers to do it, whatever is truly your school policy. But it did sound as if, you know, at least with a webinar that Kevin mentioned, that there was a preference for unweighted GPA, just because that way, you know, everything is clear and the university can really do what they want with the GPA.
Thank you, Rachel. Is there any specific date when a student can start filling out their Common App profile?
Like I think it's the 1st of August, right? Like, and actually if they have a profile before that, it will all be gone. So it's not recommended. It's better to wait until applications open, and that's normally at the beginning of August, and then they can start working on it. And the sooner they invite us, the better, like we can work on a profile as well.
Yeah, and I would say that students who are, let's say in 11th grade or like juniors or even earlier, they can create a common application. And sometimes my students, you know, I just like to show it to my students, and maybe they'll fill out their profile information or their education information. And then each year on August 1st, it will ask them if they want to roll over their information into the new Common Application. So students can start, but Kevin is right. Anything that they do for a college specific questions, like if they started on those 10 Stanford questions, the next year when it gets rolled over, those answers will not roll over. All of that will be erased. So they would have to do those things again. So I would recommend they can start on the Common Application itself, that middle tab where, the common part of it, but they shouldn't do anything related to the university specifically on there, because that will not roll over.
Excellent answer.
And that's why it would be good. That's why it would be good to use the Google Drive, so they can have all these questions in there. The only problem is they might change questions, right? So it might change a little bit.
Maybe another option that they may have is also downloading a PDF, if that is still an option, so that they can have it printed or saved in a document file in their computers. So that may be an option as well. What if a student was not able to add his recommender or recommenders? Is there a specific date for that?
You have to do it before you submit it, right? Like it's mandatory. So they can't. Well, and this is also why it's so important to not wait until the last moment. I know, like today I had a discussion with my own students. They have to make appointment with us every month. And everybody realized that today was the last day of September. And so they all started scheduling these appointments, and like us teachers were very overwhelmed. So I told them, like, this is what happens if you wait until the last moment. It's really important, especially if you want to study abroad, like to keep an eye on all the deadlines and make sure that, like if you need anything from other people, that you give them also some extra time. So as counselors, we really have to motivate them to plan accordingly and don't leave it until the last moment, because I don't work at the moment.
Yeah, and I would also say that the student can submit their application. They really need to make sure that they submit their application by the deadline, and they should assign the recommenders before submitting their application. But the teacher letter of recommendation and the counselor letter of recommendation doesn't have to be completed at the time that the student submits. So they can go ahead and submit early if they want, and maybe the teacher is still working on their letter. That's fine. The student submission is independent of the teacher submission. It's just that you do want to make sure that everything is in by deadline. And also for the students who, there's lots of universities where maybe their regular deadline is January 1st, but there's a particular scholarship that the student is applying for that has a December 1st deadline or November 1st deadline. For that teacher recommendation, it's really important that the student communicate that internal secret deadline to them, because that's not going to show up on their side, and it's going to look as if it's just January 1st, and that teacher might take a long time and they might miss that deadline. So really, really important for the students to be responsible for communicating that to their teachers, and then we as counselors, following up with communication.
Management, very important, students. So class size refers to the groups A, B, or C, or the whole generation per se?
The whole generation, like everybody graduating.
Everybody graduating, and it may be like 11th grade A, 11th grade B, 11th grade C. So all of the A, B, and C 11th graders in that sense. Okay, excellent. Because here in Nicaragua, we only have 11th grade. We don't go up to 12th grade. Just I think that's the same as in Mexico. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And one of our last questions: if a student takes a gap year, and will my counselor recommend me for that particular gap year, or no? Or she puts the data about, or she can recommend me for the year that she recommended me, that I graduated from. Meaning that if I did maybe any extracurricular activities during my gap year, will she be able to talk about that during my recommendation, or what?
I feel like if it's a gap year, like as counselors, we talk about like how we know our student and like when they were with us. If we stay in touch, like we could reflect on it. But if the student takes a gap year, there's like a whole section on the gap year, and like there's going to be reflection on it as well. So that's going to be part of the student to kind of reflect on that and like talk about how the student lived that gap year and what the student did in that gap year that would also attract those colleges, right? And especially in the United States, and I think there's even like empirical evidence that a gap year students do perform better academically, right? So that doesn't even look bad. I think what really matters is like the evolution of the student and what the student has learned. But I don't think as a counselor, we're not going to be talking about the gap year. We're going to be talking about how the student did at our school.
Excellent.
Right, Rachel?
Yeah, and I was going to say too that a student has two options. They can apply to university with the rest of their class and then defer admission. If, you know, at the university that they got into that they want to attend, they can choose to defer admission. Of course, you need to communicate with the university to make sure that they do allow that. So you can go ahead and apply, and, you know, your counselor will send your documents, etc. And then you take that year gap, or you can wait to apply, you know, have your gap year and then apply. So it's just so you know that you don't have to wait if you don't want to. Although some students certainly do, especially if you think that it's really going to help you mature, or that your teacher will have a lot different things to say about you, you might want to wait.
All right. So thank you, Rachel, and thank you so much, Kevin, for this insightful and so much to learn session that we had today on the Common App, especially for our guidance counselors throughout the region. It was very helpful for us. And I also want to tell our audience today that we do have other webinars coming on October 14th. A help guide to the CSS profile, very important for those students trying to reach or acquire financial aid. And also on the 19th, on the 14th is at 4 p.m. CST, 5 p.m. CDT, 6 p.m. EDT. So make sure you guys tune in to our Education USA pages: Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, Panama, El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico, to find more information on our coming up sessions. And I want to wish everyone a wonderful afternoon, and tune in next week. Thank you, Rachel, again, and thank you, Kevin. Kevin, I know left, but have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much, Jackson, and the rest of the team. Thanks so much.